Welcome to Inspired Edinburgh. Powerful conversations helping you reconnect with your purpose. I'm Elliot Reeves and my guest today is Mario Tomic. Mario is the founder of Tomic.com, a company that provides evidence-based fitness, nutrition and personal development coaching services. You're a certified physique and behaviour change coach, a YouTuber, a public speaker, a digital entrepreneur and a world traveller. In the past few years, your following has grown to in excess of 100,000 followers and your YouTube videos have had more than 8 million views. Your mission is to empower people to regain control over their health, develop critical thinking, embrace the journey of self-improvement and reach their full potential as human beings. Amazing. Mario, it's an honour to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Elliot. Pleasure being here with you and to discuss some of these things. Yeah, big honor, big honor.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I think I'm out of breath after that intro. Wow, it's quite something. And you know, your journey seems to be something quite incredible. So I'm really looking forward to finding out more about it. So I suppose in the beginning, you know, if we can start by hearing about, you know, your background, your upbringing, and really, I suppose, who Mario Tomic is.
Yeah, great question. Actually, I think we spoke a little bit earlier and I told you I'd never heard of this type of question before from my actual background way back, how I started, where I grew up and all that. Usually on interviews I talk about the current situation, what's going on, where did I travel last month, you know, and there's been a lot of going on in the last few years in my life, and I would say it's almost like having two lives. And if we go back to, I guess, where it all began, I've lived and I was born in a very, very small town, a village next to a small town at the southern border of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatia. My parents are Croatian, we're Croatian, and we're a minority in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It was the late 80s, just before the Yugoslavian war started. That's where Croatia fought for the freedom. There was a lot of tension going on, and it was a hard time for this whole region. And that kind of made a big impact on a lot of people around me. For me personally, I was a little kid. I kind of remember stuff, you know, I remember the sirens, I remember fear in the air, I remember not having food. I remember, I don't know, waiting for the next German shipment of Kinder, you know, and chocolate and stuff like Nutellas and all this like stuff that Italians and Germans would be sending because we didn't have, sometimes we didn't have food, and clothing would be kind of scarce and you couldn't really get that. But it wasn't super bad as many other regions around there, which were kind of on the front line. They had it much, much worse. Luckily, we didn't have that much exposure. But it was kind of tough because in the air, you could just sense fear. And as I said, I mean, as a little kid, you're kind of like, you're not developed yet to really understand what's going on. But later on, I noticed how much that changed the adult population, or even those that are just a little bit older than me. Because luckily, by the time I went to school, it was all kind of sorted out. You know, when I went to school, it wasn't that tense. There wasn't a lot of things going on. I remember some of my colleagues that were just a couple of years older than me. School was a mess, man. I mean, imagine going to school during war times, right? You would still kind of go sometimes, but then there was like a siren, there was like people shooting guns and stuff like that, you know, like random people just go crazy because of it, and that made a huge influence on them. And there, I guess, it's kind of, I mean, people, at least currently, if we look at the personal development niche and that kind of world, it's always like, it's all a blank slate, man. You just start off, you know, it's all willpower, it's all you, right?
Yes.
It's not always all you. There's so many environmental factors and so many things that I could consider myself lucky, because if I was born just a couple of years earlier, I would have been in all that mess. I would not been here, right? And it just kind of like a couple of these random events that are totally outside of my control could have shaped my life in a totally different way, right? So, but we can talk about that a little bit later. Now, yeah, I remember, I mean, one reason why I'm here, another reason why I have to mention is my parents. My mother, she really instilled a lot of values in me in terms of integrity, in terms of really being kind of like what you say you do, but you don't really promise a lot of things. So I was never really that kind of guy, or even as a little kid, that I would promise a lot of things and not deliver. So that was a really interesting core value that I got from her. And from my dad is a complete nerd. He's into electronics, and he's definitely one of the reasons why I'm also here, because he was the one that was always pushing us to go forward, learn English, adopt technology very fast, because he was trying to stay on the cutting edge of technology, even though during the war and all these times people were just worried about food and things like that. And he would be like installing a satellite. We were like the first in our village that we had the satellite TV, and we had the first computer. And I remember kids coming to our house where they would be just like, oh my God, let's like, what is this, you know, and things like that. And the fact is that I was exposed to satellite, and I was, I mean, I had the Cartoon Network and all these things. Kind of, I guess I had a good understanding of English before I started learning it actively, which helped me now come here and talk to you, because my native tongue is Croatian, right? And if those, I mean, of course, watching this, they can check one of the earlier videos, they're going to see that I barely speak English properly, right? But I still had a good idea of understanding English because of my dad. He doesn't, to this day, he's not very fluent in English, but he does understand as well. And that geeky side of his, I think I've kind of inherited that value, where I'm constantly trying to stay on, like, in touch with what's going on in technology, and I'm very passionate about that as well. And that really helped a lot in my life, I think, because if there wasn't for the computers and the satellite and my parents pushing me, no way I would have been here. And it's not all me, right? I have to say that. I mean, maybe some of it is now, because now I'm working hard. But back then, when you're a little kid, a lot of your success depends on your parents and your environment. Sad but true, right? Some of it is just like that. Now, a couple of years forward, you know, fast forward, we got high school, we got primary school, I guess, and then high school. I was always kind of this goal-oriented kid that didn't necessarily enjoy high school as much, or primary school, but I managed to get good grades because my parents cared about that. It was kind of like, college is the salvation, right? College is the way. That was what I was taught as a little kid. And it was all moving toward me going to college, to be the first in my family to actually go to college, right? And I understand where that came from now, because back then I didn't understand where that came from. But now looking back, I mean, college used to be a big deal in the 80s, in the 90s, or in the 70s, where my parents were kind of, I mean, that's what they knew was the best, and that was the best at that time. I mean, of course, in the last 2 decades, things changed rapidly, especially in the last decade, and then now college is kind of losing its value. But I did go to college. I got a master's degree in computing. That was very interesting. The reason why I picked computing was I was actually on the verge of going to medical school or computing. It's totally different things, right? But I was always passionate about biology. I was learning a lot about that in high school. I had all straight A's or 5s in my country in biology, and also in computing, right? In computer science. So those were the 2 things that I was super interested in. And the reason I went for computing was actually, I have to admit that I played it safe. Because I knew that in computing back then, because I was thinking I'm going to go to get a job, I was thinking, like, computing, come on, it's like obvious you're going to find a job, because it's like you're an engineer, you know? And finished that, got my master's degree, and then I worked for a year in an office after, I mean, struggling for about half a year to even get some work. Even longer than that was quite tough. It was just on the verge of crisis back 2008 or so. Around that period of time. I mean, if you look at this region, Croatia/Bosnia Herzegovina, all that region, it's always been a little bit harder to find work, especially if you're just coming off college, where you don't have the skill sets yet. Employees don't necessarily value that much if you're not already kind of experienced. And I didn't have a lot of experience, you know, and I was just I mean, I wasted a lot of my college years on World of Warcraft, and I was hacking the process basically just to finish college, right? Because I was thinking the degree is really what it all is about. Because once you have the degree, bam, like life is sorted out. And I have the degree, but it doesn't really do much for you if you're not actually developed in terms of your skill sets. And I mean, once I finished college, that was kind of the first time in my life that I realized, well, okay, it's not like what you've been told and what the system is kind of promoting might not actually be true. Because what I was told before I went to college was, okay, just finish college, do your 5 years, pay your dues, you know, get all the programming, math, physics, like statistics, complicated stuff out of the way, engineering stuff and all that, and it's gonna be easy, right? That's like easy going from then on. Finish college, no job, right? No job, no offers, no places for you. And then you start realizing a little bit that some people might have been wrong, maybe not intentionally, but just the fact that all your professors that are telling you that you're 100% guaranteed to get a job, promo materials for the college itself, it's not realizing, well, maybe there's something like marketing, maybe there's something going on here that is not exactly what the reality is.
Yeah.
And luckily, I got a job after about, I think it was 8 months or so, and during those eight months was really hard because my parents, we're not rich. Far from that. We literally live paycheck to paycheck, and I don't mean it in like a kind of I guess you could say some people live paycheck to paycheck even though they have a lot of funds.
Yes,
we're like, okay, how do we pay the electricity bill and things like that, most of the time.
Yeah.
And that's the reality because the region and how much my parents invested in my college was a lot, right? And there was a lot of sacrifice. And when I came back home, I was like, okay, now it's time for me to work, produce an income, and help everybody. That didn't happen. So I was kind of a burden, even though I had all this degree, I have all this potential, but I still felt like a burden, and I was, right? And it was a huge struggle. And my brother as well, he started college at the same time, which was another burden. It was just such a big strain. And I really felt bad for quite a bit of time there. I felt like I was totally useless. Like imagine, you can't produce any value. You think that you don't have any purpose, right, at some point. Luckily, I got that job. I got to experience a year of corporate work. We can get into that a little bit, but it didn't match my vision, my purpose, my potential, and I didn't feel happy, right? So
was it like an entry-level role that you went into then?
Yeah. It was a system administrator in a government stable job. It's basically a kind of job that people dream about. You could say that in this region, people dream about getting that job because eventually, once you kind of settle into the government positions, you're pretty much set for life. You get this salary, and it's kind of safe. And it's a safe option, and my parents were really happy with that. I was happy initially because I thought, well, man, like it's all good, right? Sort it out.
Yeah.
I started saving a little bit. All these good things started happening, but there was a slow buildup of kind of like, man, is this really what it is? Like, is this the end, right? And we can get a little bit into that. But I just felt like there's a lot of other people that were on the same path, and I just look at their lives and where they ended up, and I was like, man, if I do this, I'm gonna end up like that as well, and they don't look very happy. And it's just a lot of these small decisions kind of compounded. And eventually I actually decided to quit that job, which didn't make a lot of people happy. Like I was pretty much the only person sort of happy with it, but more like afraid when I did that.
And what did you think that you were going to do at that stage?
When I quit that job, the truth was that I didn't have a good strategy. I had some savings built up, and prior to quitting the job, I started working as an intern for larger companies as a marketing intern. So during the 6 months before I quit, I started getting into personal development. I started getting into fitness as well a little bit before that. So there was kind of two parallel journeys, and I was reading all these books. I read like the 4-Hour Work Week. I read all this like success books like Think and Grow Rich, and I thought I was invincible, right? I thought like I had all this knowledge, and it's done, man, right? You have Tony Robbins to motivate you. You have like Napoleon Hill to show you how to visualize your money dropping from the air. You have like a 4-hour work week, means that you can work only 4 hours and be like financially free, travel the world. And I was like, man, like I can get this, and sort of I like that because it sort of pushed me in the right direction. But I had a lot of beliefs back then that now I know it was completely off. But I kind of am glad that I got inspired through those resources because they pushed me to learn skills. And I started learning social media marketing. I recognized that would be a good skill. I started writing some articles on sites like Fiverr and giving my services like that. And I got some basic skills, and I eventually started freelancing for free. Because I thought that I had some savings up, and because living in the environment where I was, I didn't have a lot of costs. I was living with my parents. So I freelanced for free for about 3 months or so at multiple different companies. And eventually I got a gig as a marketing kind of, I guess an assistant sort of role in social media marketing. And that was kind of the first break where I started earning a little bit more money than I had before from my job, which made me feel a little bit safer to continue my journey of improvement. That was way before I started fitness or anything like that.
Okay.
And that was a very, very interesting, like a tipping point where I feel like that financial, just that a little bit of stability, even though everybody else was thinking, what am I doing? You know, like they didn't understand what I was doing, because people, I mean, we need to understand, even now, people don't believe that you can make money online, right? Even now, if you tell someone you can make money online, they're going to tell you you're either scamming someone, you're like, I don't know, you're doing something to trick people, or it's not real money, or it's not actual finances that you're it's not long term. Like that's the type of thinking. And boy, did I get in trouble for that, right? Like nobody had any empathy for me back then, like nobody, right? But I did have forums and groups and things like that where people were kind of struggling to do the same. So that was fortunate. Luckily, if I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't be here, you know? Like that. That's kind of like, I guess I kind of dig myself out of that hole there. And yeah, it was a very, very small difference between me doing what I do right now, I would say, if I look back, versus just me continuing that job. If I didn't quit it, I would probably be still there, and bam.
Yeah.
Right. Very, very small difference.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, I'm interested to hear, I suppose, I mean, you just sort of touched upon it, the your health transformation, I suppose, because I mentioned to you earlier, I have seen historic pictures of you where you don't look like you do just now. I mean, I wouldn't say you were by any stretch grossly overweight or anything, but I mean, you weren't, you know, sort of like lean and muscled. So like, what was the catalyst for the transformation?
Well, one thing that people don't know is that the transformation for the body, right? My transformation when I decided to get my health in order was actually happening at the same time as my personal development transformation. But you don't really see what's going on here. You just see what's going on outside. Yeah. And I would say that, I mean, fitness is just one part of you developing yourself as a person. So when I kind of started getting into this whole personal development world, I started then working on pretty much everything. And it just inspired me. Well, I realized, look, the mind, the body, and the body itself, it's basically your vehicle that you have. You're stuck with it. You know, you can either make the most out of it, you know, make it work for you, or you can actually be kind of neutral or work against you at some point. So you got to have your body on your side. If you're looking to achieve good things in your life, you're looking to be focused, energized for a long time, have the energy to actually do anything, the body is critical. And I've realized this because I've seen so many people trade their health for money, or trade their health for short-term happiness, and it never really worked out for them. I've seen people, like, I mean, drop like flies around me from cancers and things like that, who don't really, like, even family cases and stuff like that. And these people never really took care of that area of their lives. You know, they were always kind of ignoring it and shoving it, you know, like away, you know, don't, like, later, and always kind of catches up with you. And that was, I mean, to be fair, that was after a while that I started thinking like this. In the beginning, it was more like, okay, I really am not proud of myself. I didn't look at my body, and I was thinking, well, look, I mean, I have to get this thing handled, you know, and I can do it, and I know that I can, and that was one of the personal development things that the first thing you really learn is that you have control, right? That's the first thing I think was the most important in my entire journey, is learning that you have control. Because before that, what I was thinking, it's total victim mentality, right? You're the victim of these circumstances around you. You have no power to change anything. Your food is dictated by your environment, your friends, your family, who you eat with, and all of that. And then I started realizing, well, I have this control, and then I can actually do these actions that will lead to a totally different outcome, and I can choose whether to do them or not. And once I picked that, and I decided to do that, I was very, very strict in my first year of my transformation that people see now. I was actually very strict, man. I was like, no life. I was very, very diligent. I said no to a lot of my friends, pretty much on a daily basis, to hanging out, to drinking, to partying, pretty much everything. And Yeah, it was kind of black and white-ish. You know, I don't recommend that approach right now for my clients, but it was something that I did as sort of like, I guess, it was almost like an opposite. You know, the pendulum was in a different direction where I just allowed everybody to have their say in my agenda, or what I was doing, what I was eating, what I was behaving like. I was always matching my kind of self-image with other people's expectations. But then the pendulum swung in the other direction, which is now, okay, this is me. I have my vision, like, don't talk to me, I'm gonna do what I wanna do. And it was a really different opposite, and that kind of, I mean, kind of went back to balance, sort of, so I can actually get feedback from other people and things like that. But for the first year, I wasn't listening to anybody. Like, for the first year, man, I was very, very bro-y, bro sciencey in terms of my dieting, was very, very on point, training 5 days a week, not missing a single workout. It was really, really on point. And it taught me a lot. I think it taught me a lot, but it did come from a place of big kind of, I guess, feeling not happy with myself, and that sort of changed after a while. But really, that realization that you have control over your own life, over your own outcomes, that you can actually make different changes in your life, man, that was huge. I was like, why didn't I know this before? You know, I was like, come on. But yeah.
So yeah, what did your training and your diet look like for that kind of year?
Yeah, it was a basic program.
Yeah.
One of my friends that I knew that was into training, I just asked him, hey, can you send me a program? He just sent me a random program. It was total bro science. I mean, it was kind of a bro-ish split, you know, Monday, if I can remember that, Monday, shoulders and arms, I think it was like that. Then it was legs, then it was back and biceps again, chest and triceps, and then it was the fifth day. What was the fifth day? I think it was some kind of cardio plus again, I think arms, or some ridiculous program. I mean, I would not recommend doing that now, right?
Yeah.
But it was enough for me because it provided me a very strict structure, so I didn't really have to think about it. And luckily, I didn't have that many resources at that point because I wasn't yet searching online for resources, and there wasn't this whole YouTube and fitness community like it is right now. So I didn't get too confused. I could actually take action on it, which was, I mean, right now I totally empathize with people when they say, man, there's so many programs out there, you know. I totally understand because now there is. Back then, I just asked my buddy, hey, can you send me this? And just create a basic meal plan for me. And what he did is he basically told me eat chicken and rice, and it wasn't broccoli, but it was some kind of cabbage that we have down there, and tomatoes. Broccoli isn't really big in that region. Okay. And it was very bro-ish. I did my meal plans. I had my plastic containers, and I would take that to work. I would just hammer on that every day, and I was eating like 6 meals a day, you know, very bro style kind of diet. And I got results, right? And that taught me a lot. That taught me the value of structure as well, and just sticking to a plan. And that was big. Even though it was not the perfect plan, it was still something I could do, and it took a lot of sacrifice. But yeah, I mean, it gave results, man. Like as soon as I saw results, I was like, you just gotta keep doing this, you know, like. That's it.
So when did you decide to start, I suppose, almost developing like a personal brand and starting your channels and really putting a message out?
Yeah, that wouldn't be until very late.
Really?
Because I was even a late adopter to Facebook. In college, I didn't use Facebook, right? I didn't start even using Facebook until I almost quit my job. Because I didn't really feel, I never thought that I would be a public persona or that I would ever go into expressing my ideas. I was always afraid of what people would think of me, and I was always kind of proud of myself to not be the mainstream guy, you know, like I was like, everybody's on Facebook, I'm not going to be on Facebook, you know. I was even making fun of people that were on Facebook back then when I was in college, you know, like, oh, you guys posting these pictures and status updates, I'm above, you know, like, and it was interesting. Being an introvert naturally kind of, I guess, enhanced the whole idea. Okay, just let it be, you know, do your own thing. And I was always kind of do my own thing. But after a while, I started Facebook, and having worked for learning social media and having that consulting gig and a couple of those gigs, I realized that social media is actually more good than harm in my mind. So I started kind of shifting from looking at it as like all useless and bad, I was starting to realize, well, I can actually share my thoughts. And I started posting random personal development quotes and things on my profile. That would actually get some engagement, and I realized, well, I should actually use this more. And I started using my social media more, and especially after I made my transformation in my body, that gave me a little bit of confidence to start doing more of social media. And I wasn't really afraid of doing it. Then when I started traveling, it just became like a natural thing to do. But in the beginning, I was a very late adopter to social media. And the fact is that I don't know whether that's good or bad. It just is what it is. I mean, I wouldn't really change anything right now, but the personal brand kind of started with my Facebook profile. Then I started writing a blog with my fitness stuff. I just started a website just to share my thoughts. A couple of those articles kind of got read, you know, by a few people, friends, family, those who don't understand English. And I guess, yeah, then social media started becoming very popular. I read some Gary Vaynerchuk stuff. I started realizing that there's a lot to it, you know, and YouTube was very late. I mean, YouTube, I haven't done YouTube till 2014 at all. Okay. So there were guys, I remember 2015, early 2015, that had already like 1 million subscribers. And I was listening to their stuff, and I could not imagine myself doing YouTube at all, like zero. I was always thinking, if I ever do this fitness thing full time, it's gonna be a blog. You know, I'm gonna hide behind the article, and because my English was bad.
Okay.
I just didn't imagine that I would be able to improve my English. Get rid of the Balkan accent, that deep voice, not being able to remember the words. Even now, I mean, when I'm talking to you, my brain probably has to work about 30–40% more to just come up with the content.
Seriously.
But it's pretty cool, right? And yeah, it worked out well at the end.
Yeah. So what do you think was like the sort of tipping point then? You know, when did you decide? And I think what's really interesting as well, actually, because you mentioned being an introvert, there's a surprising amount of people who are YouTubers who are introverts. It's almost like a trend. There's like, you know, a lot of the really top, I'll refrain from naming names, but it's quite common now.
Yeah, and I wouldn't really say that there are true introverts, there's true extroverts. I would say that it really depends on the situation where you find yourself in. I can say that I was an introvert in terms of video. Now I could say that I'm an extrovert when it comes to video, right? Yeah. The brain is very plastic, and what I mean by plastic, I mean you can mold the brain to be at your service, you know, if you know how to do things. And someone being an introvert or someone not having social skills, which, I mean, I'm that guy, right? That doesn't have to define you who you are, because you can change all those things. With enough reps, with enough work, you can change those things. I mean, I still, when I work, I don't like anybody around me, right? I like to have my silence. I have my website that gives me background noise with thunderstorm and sounds of nature when I work, so zone out completely. But when I'm doing videos, you can put me in the busiest street in Barcelona or London or somewhere like that where there's like a chaos around me. I'll still knock out a video. I will not even flinch. There's gonna be, I mean, sometimes I have these people like coming up from the back, you know, they're like hugging me or touching me. I don't even like recognize anymore. You learn how to be non-reactive after doing it for a very, very long time. But yeah, I could say like you can literally shift in one domain from an introvert to an extrovert. You can also revert back to an introvert. Very, very easy, right? If you don't keep training these patterns, you just go back to a default, whether your default is an extrovert or introvert.
Wow, okay. Jeez. I mean, I've noticed certainly in your YouTube channel, a lot of the content that you create, it's all really, really thoroughly researched. And it's all backed up by science, and you've done interviews with people who are really at, you know, the top of their field. What are some of the biggest learnings that you've had?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a step back and I'll say that it is researched. Most of it, I would say, or let's be conservative, let's say about 60% of it, and especially the later part of my fitness journey, I started valuing more studying my sources and research and all that. When I first started out, I really just talked from my personal experience because I didn't even know what a research study was. And I'm 100% open with that. And to be fair, even now, when I went through a bunch of studies, and even now I don't 100% understand everything that is in a study because I'm not a researcher. I have researchers that I know that I can talk with, and I can kind of get certain information from them that helps me understand. And I'm sort of I guess I'm taking a lot of their complicated scientific principles and bringing it to a very simple kind of practical way where you can apply it in everyday life, which is a part that is missing in a lot of industries, because there's a whole bunch of research happening. People don't even know about it. You know, like by the time it gets to the public, it just disappears. And a lot of it actually gets in like a commercial newspaper, and it gets misquoted or taken out of context, and all this trouble appears, right? So there's really a big portion of the industry, especially in fitness, that is, there's a demand for that. You know, there's a demand for people who actually know what they're talking about, but at the same time, they can back that up with science. And I realized that. I realized that there's some stuff that is, that the fastest way to get to the truth is through science, through evidence-based, through research. But now it's also becoming a buzzword. So, I mean, as in anything, marketers will destroy it. It's just a matter of time. But I mean, again, it is one of those things where I'm proud that I could say that I cite this source, and that I know that this source is legit when I'm producing some of my content, because the fact is I could be wrong. Even that source could be wrong. And that's one thing that you can see from people who are successful in this industry, that they've actually went through a lot of failure, and they've actually admitted that they were wrong at some point. So now if you say that, well, your content is great, man, like 5 years, some of those videos, people might be laughing at them when a new research study comes out, like a huge systematic review, and people say, well, that's just outdated. And I'll be the first one to say that. And that's the beauty of being a content creator who is not attached to his content in a sort of an ego-driven way. Because I can say that I was wrong, and I am sometimes. I can just say that. I can make a new video explaining what's going on. Because if you care about your audience, if you care about the people actually looking at your stuff, you will want to help them and reveal to them the truth. But what I see a lot in the fitness industry right now, people will write books about certain concepts. When those books become bestsellers, now they're invested. There's a lot of confirmation bias. So everything else that is coming out, it's all about looking at that through the lens of, I'm right and this must be wrong, even though it's totally contradicting me and it's the truth. So it's important to, if you want to succeed in any industry, it's really important to be able to learn continuously and give up some of your beliefs. I think that's one of the core principles why the fitness industry got almost like a revolution, where all these kind of more skeptical people started getting into it, and they started questioning everything. Because back in the day, man, I was like, big guy in the gym says you need to do like 10 sets of bicep curls. Everybody does 10 sets of bicep curls. But now these guys like Brad Schoenfeld, like a famous researcher, came out and they're like, okay, let's put that hypothesis to the test. You know, 2 different conditions, 3 different conditions, control, let's see what's up. And now we're advancing in, let's say in the last decade, we advanced more than forever, you know, even in the last 5 years, which is really, I'm happy to be a part of that movement that brings that kind of information to the general public.
Yeah, I mean, it must be sort of strange for you, because there's so many people now that are digesting your content and that are looking at it, that it kind of needs to be factually accurate. You know, it's incumbent upon you to be producing stuff that is correct.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's easy when your video is shown to 50 people. Nobody's even questioning you, to be honest. But if your video gets seen by 1 million people, you will be questioned, and everybody will be like, okay, this guy has somewhat of an influence, so he better be right. You know, he better be right. And sadly, I mean, some of this stuff out there is far from the truth, and it's getting a lot of attention. But I mean, we're fixing that. We're slowly chipping at that, and it's going to be in the next couple of years, I think, the evidence-based fitness world, if there's if the movement continues growing like it grew now, I think in a couple of years there's going to be a huge, people will have so much knowledge that you can't really BS people anymore with like marketing scams. You know, I think, at least, I mean, I'm an idealist.
Okay, so I suppose, like, in your journey then, when did you decide that actually fitness was the thing that you really wanted to kind of drill down and master and go into as a kind of profession, and then coaching people, you know?
Yeah, that's a good question, and if I could pinpoint a time, I would. To be honest, a lot of, I mean, I know a lot of success books will say, hey, I was just born with and to be this fitness coach. I don't necessarily believe that there's this black and white answer that at this point in my life I would exactly knew that and I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I know that fitness is going to be a big part of my life until I die, and that's probably a big part of everybody's lives until you die, your body, your health, mastering that. And I will again come back to the point that fitness is just one part of the whole development as a person. So for me, I find fitness to be one of the things that I could share my message through. Because, I mean, talking about personal development, just personal development, it's sort of like, okay, where's the substance of it? You know, where are you applying that personal development to? Are you applying it to business? Are you applying it to fitness? Are you applying it to your social skills? Or are you applying it to your higher purpose? Where are you actually applying those lessons from personal development? And I find fitness, for me personally, was the thing that taught me the practical side of those lessons that I've learned from books from Brian Tracy, from Tony and Robbins and all these guys that talk about the value of trusting the process, having the patience, putting in the reps, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger style. And I can see that happen in the gym, and that's what kind of led me to think, well, this is my vehicle through which I can share my message, and it's going to be 100% congruent because I am living that life and I am actually talking about it at the same time. Because you want full congruence. You want to actually be able to talk about stuff that you've also experienced in your own skin. So you can't just be a coach without having some of at least your experience in the field. And I find, I mean, fitness for me personally, it was a life changer. And now for my clients, I mean, it is just one of those areas of life you got to handle. If you're looking to be the top of the top, it's unavoidable, right? It has to become handled.
Wow, powerful stuff. I like it. When did you decide that you wanted to start traveling?
Yeah, that was actually I think my first flight was back in 2012. I flew to Amsterdam, and actually I got robbed in Amsterdam. That was my first experience as well. It was interesting to be on a flight, and I mean, to be honest, I never even knew what a flight would look like. I mean, I was already in my 20s, right? And I was like, okay, let's try this. And I flew there, and yeah, man, it was a huge shock. It was a huge shock, and at the beginning, I actually went back home. Like after a month, and I went there I stayed at one of my friend's house, who I knew from just the personal development coaching community and all of that, and that was really cool because I got to learn more about their cultures, and I improved my English as well. It was really cool to be in a different country. I realized a lot of things. I was in a bubble back before I went traveling. I was really living in this bubble where the environment sort of like, you don't really feel how the environment affects you until you leave the environment. Only until you've actually exited your environment, you can see all those triggers that were and all those influences, how you would actually behave when those disappear. And to be fair, in our environments dictate about 60–70% of our behavior. There's all these decisions that you're making because your environment is there. I mean, if the cake is in your fridge, you're going to eat it. If people at work are bringing food and there's food on the table, you're going to eat it. Simple examples from nutrition. If your friends all are talking about how their boss sucks, you're most likely going to be negative as well. And that's just the way we are. We're social creatures. Now, when I kind of went out of that environment, I started realizing, well, the traveling is where you can continuously keep challenging yourself to change and to reinvent yourself every few months. So there's potential with travel to grow even faster. Because travel, what it forces you, I mean, if you think about it, every time you have to reset, you know, in 3 months, you reset your whole life and you have to rebuild. And there's so many lessons you learn from that. It's incredible. Yeah, 2012, life-changing first trip was a huge shocker. I didn't even know what a train was, man. Like, I mean, like I didn't know what an airplane was, what a train was, what public transport is. We don't have any of that. I mean, if you think about it, I'm coming from a very small village. Even my college city was like 50,000 people. Like nothing much there to see, you know, and it was amazing even to see big buildings that are like shiny marketing. Like you get this feeling of abundance, right? You sense abundance for a little bit, because where I'm coming from, you can still see like the bullet holes on the buildings. And I was like, okay, this is different, right? This is different. You know, there's stuff happening here. Some people are thriving in this environment. So you kind of get a feel for it, you know? And yeah, you learn a lot. Like, it's totally different. I mean, if you've been kind of accustomed to it, it almost feels normal. But for me, it was a huge, huge shock.
I love listening to your answers, man. They're really, honestly, really, really good. How many countries have you been to now?
45. Tomorrow it's going to be 46.
Yeah, incredible. And how do you think that's changed your kind of worldview?
Massive, massive influence on my worldview through the fact, I think, I mean, it kind of is going hand in hand with social media, where you can see all these things happening, but not until you actually experience certain places can you get sort of a feel for it. Because to be fair, we all fed a certain image, and we have these stereotypes built on what a person should behave like in a different country, or even your friend. And when you're like, okay, I'm in India right now, and people aren't behaving like the social media says, you know, what's going on here? You know, there's like people that are exactly like me, they're doing the exact same thing, and it's like same, you know, and it's like you start realizing that people are very, very similar in their behavior all around the world. And you realize how much of an influence these factors have on your own thinking, because you're no longer black and white about things. You start looking more at a gray kind of contextual kind of way. Okay, if you put this person in the same context, they're probably going to behave the same. So it's not actually the person that is the one that is supposed to carry the blame for something, or responsibility for something bad, or credit for something good, but it's actually a lot of where they're placed. You know, if you put someone in an environment where they're just pushed forward, they're very likely to succeed. And you learn so much about these kinds of things, where your mind starts realizing that the world is really very similar, and that there's all these borders that we see is just a bunch of nonsense. And it just, I mean, for me, it was an eye-opener to go to Asia or like Japan. When I first went to Japan, which is, I guess it was one of the places where I could say it was the almost exact opposite of human behavior than what I learned back home or in Europe. And you realize, I mean, how much of the stuff is learned behavior, you know, from the culture and how people behave just because someone told them to behave like that, or how much collectivism in some countries, how much individualism is in the other countries. So you kind of start questioning whether your own approach is like what you thought it was the only approach, you know. Is that really true? Because there's people succeeding in different environments, and they're making it happen. And you see, like, there's so many options out there, and you feel like there's no place for judgment anymore. Like, you can't judge people anymore. After you've been through a lot of countries, you really refrain from judgment. You stop looking at the cover of the book, and you really kind of admit that you don't know. You know, if someone asks me, even for some countries where I just spent a week, how is it like there? I first create a context. Well, I was just there for a week, man. So this is the stuff that I've done. So this is the stuff that was good. This was stuff, you know, like, I wouldn't say, oh yeah, Sweden sucks, or Sweden is awesome, or Norway is amazing, or Norway sucks. No, man, I was just there for a week. I'm sad that I didn't have a chance to be there for longer. You know, you start really looking at the world from a more nuanced perspective.
Yes, because so many people make those kind of sweeping generalizations about so many things.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's no place for that, in to be honest. And and if people would really travel more, and if they had the ability, I would say this is a very luxury kind of thing, and it's certainly not possible for everybody. Like, my mother never been on a flight before. The furthest away she was like a 6-hour drive from home. You know, like that's like everybody almost that I know. And I feel very humbled and blessed that I can be in that situation to see these things. And you can see when you talk about these different locations, I mean, it opens you up as well to start thinking more that the world isn't that big of a scary place as the media or some people try to make you believe. Because I mean, I don't watch any media, or I'm cut off totally. I mean, you can talk a bit about that. But I mean, my newsfeed is blocked. I don't read any news. I don't know what the hell is going on. And that actually is very interesting, because what the media and a lot of stuff that you see out there is that there's all these bad things happening, and the world is just a scary place, that it's best just to stay home, preventive focused, just be safe, you know, like in your little home, don't go anywhere. When you start traveling and you go to certain places, you're like, well, man, like, there's nothing wrong here, you know. certain things can happen, but I mean, come on, you know, people live their lives. People are mostly good. People are mostly ready to help you, even though you don't deserve help sometimes. You know, people just go out of their way to help you, which is a really good eye opener. You know, like you learn that people are inherently good. You know, like we have all this reciprocity kind of mindset. You know, they will help you just because it makes them feel good, and it just makes you feel good, and then you help them. It's just crazy how much I hope it's not going to go too much in this direction of portraying the whole world as a big scary place, that the social media will actually kind of, I guess, eventually get rid of this fake news and really put out the right picture. There's so many great places in the world, and people are afraid to go to these places. And
I think social media has been fantastic for that, in raising people's awareness of what the reality is more like. And it reminds me, actually, I recently saw, it was a pie chart, and this is perhaps you know, around about the mainstream media. It was a pie chart that showed the number of deaths in America, and then of those deaths it showed the number of them which are gun crime related, and it's so fractional that it's almost, you know, it's like infinitesimal relative to the whole thing, but the media would have you believe that there's like gun wars all the time and that people are constantly being shot, which is like, it's not. Whilst these things are awful, I'm not, by no means am I condoning them, it's not that frequent.
Yeah, and how much of that is really creating this, spreading this fear that could in one way even cause some of those things, because people are just so crazy and paranoid, and they just can't deal with it. How much of that is giving permission people? And we have to think about it, and these are very hard questions to ask. You know, if you put a sign, and this is well studied actually, social science, if you put a sign, "Don't drop the trash here," people will assume that this is a place where everybody else drops the trash, so I'm going to drop my trash as well, right? And if you say that, certain things like that, if you're not really careful how do you frame your message, man, like you can be in big trouble. And I'm a little bit scared, because I mean, this is a domain outside of my control. But do we really know what we're talking about when we're putting out headlines? You know, do we know how much of that is causing a nocebo effect, you know, in people, you know, things like that? And I mean, it's kind of even scary to think about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. When I met you at the airport, it was funny because you have a suitcase and you have a backpack, and you basically said, "This is like my worldly belongings." So I mean, you on the road and with the traveling that you do, you must live a very sort of lean, minimal life. How's that changed your relationship with material possessions?
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, everything that I have can fit in a 22-kilo bag that's in my backpack. Most of that is really my tech that I carry for videos, and some of it is clothes. I've personally there's no attachment toward any kind of clothing or any kind of specific thing where I would say, hey, this is a part of me. No, I don't have any bracelets, any necklaces, nothing. And I've kind of I guess it's just for me, if you look at it, why logically this makes sense for me, I just don't want to have that burden to make decisions related to that. The less things that I have to make decisions on, the more focused I can be on the things that truly matter. So if I have to worry about what's going to happen with my my collections of bracelets or whatever, or my rings, or which shirt am I going to wear tomorrow, is that energy justified? That investment of that energy, is it really justified? Because I mean, looking at even some of the research on decision fatigue, we can clearly see that the amount of decisions you can make in a day, pretty much finite. By finite I mean like you have I guess a price to pay for making so many decisions. And there's a really cool study on this done, judges on parole. They're basically getting these people from prison. They could decide whether they should leave the prison or stay there, depending on how strong their case is. And what happened in this particular case, in this study, what they looked at is that it wasn't really how strong or how good the case of the person was coming out of prison to go in front of the judges. It was more the fact when the judges made the decision throughout the day that played a huge role if they would go out or not. And what happened is that the judges in the morning, when they were fresh, they were ready to look at each case, they made a lot of effort. A lot of people, got a positive, because it was true. Then as they progressed, it was mainly no. At the end of the day, nobody got out because they made so many decisions that they couldn't really think anymore about each case, so they just had to play it safe. because they couldn't really think anymore. And how many of us come back from work, it's like 6 p.m., you know, and no more decisions, you know, and end up like downing a box of like Pop-Tarts and stuff like that, because your brain is so destroyed by the end of the day because you haven't managed your energy properly that you cannot do stuff. And if you spend your energy on which shirt I'm gonna wear, what am I like, what this person thinks of me, like are my shoes the perfect match for my I don't know, tie color or whatever, that's all energy, and we have a finite amount of it. Even though we can train some of it, it's just not, I mean, for me personally, my personal choice is not to train it. And also emotionally, I like to train myself not to be attached to materialistic stuff, because if I lose it, I just like can replace it easily. Yeah.
So what are the things that you concentrate your energies on?
It's really my personal productivity and mostly relationships with people, right? That's literally most of my energy goes to that. And I would say if I'm in a work immersed kind of mode, it's going to be even 95% kind of productivity and 5% people, which is not a good idea. When I say productivity, I really encompass work and my health and everything there, basically me. Me versus how much you focus on helping others and really contributing to them in my surrounding, because my work can help hundreds of thousands of people, but if people around me aren't kind of in touch with me, I mean, sadly sometimes, I mean, I don't have time to talk to my parents, and we live in the same house, right? And it's like a week, you know, we barely spoke, things like that. And that's like periods of immersion. And I'm trying to kind of combine that more to make it more sustainable, because the relationships and the value of relationships is something we don't really value until we lose. Sadly, we cannot see that. And there's always more work. And we have this dream that there's one day, I mean, it's just going to become easier, you know, like I'm going to hit this threshold of subscribers, or I'm going to get this deal, or I'm going to put out this product, or I'm going to coach this many clients, and it's just going to become a little bit easier. Fact is, it's probably going to become harder. I mean, think about it. If you've achieved a great goal this year, what are you going to do next year? You're going to set a bigger goal. If you do a good work at your job, if you're employed right now, what is going to happen? Well, your boss is going to give you more work. You know, like you're better. You're just like more work. So there's really never this time for a break. It's really about you taking control and managing your time better. And that's what I realized. I mean, the most with my time is that it's always going to be busy. Now it's up to you to really balance the balls a little bit better, you know, like juggle it a little bit better.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, how do you then stay more present rather than continually focusing on bigger things?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And I personally am not really a big things kind of guy. Okay. I know plenty of my friends that are super vision oriented, and some of them actually struggle with executing the process on a day-to-day basis, because they're always like, oh my God, I have this big idea, you know, like I have this huge improvement. And what I've kind of caught myself when I fell into that trap was that I was always thinking big, always thinking how to make it perfect. And every day you wake up, there's a new idea how to improve it. Never gets done, right? And I've kind of trained myself over the years to be more reps oriented, more day-to-day oriented, looking more at my 24 hours instead of what's going to happen in the next 5 years. The 5 years vision is great for motivation. Perfect, right? Once every 6 months or so, you know, you remind yourself, you remember the vision, why you're doing it. But really, when you're in the trenches, when you're doing like 24-hour periods, you got to focus on the immediate, what's in front of you, because ultimately that makes up your week makes up your months make up your years, and in 5 years, you get what you do in your 24 hours consistently, not what you imagine in your mind that it's going to be this big goal. And I've really tried to unwire myself from thinking super long-term and big all the time, because it's just it's almost like an instant gratification kind of situation, because that's exciting, you know, and stuff that is not exciting is really the stuff that you should be doing, because that's the stuff that you're probably avoiding, and that's the stuff that, I mean, that's the kind of the cave, you know, the scary cave that holds the biggest treasure, is the one that is there in front of you that you're not doing. And I feel like the message of doing more of what you already know works gets lost in personal development. Like, that's the message that gets lost, because how much more do we know than what we're actually implementing? Like, I know 1,000 times more than I'm actually implementing. There's probably people that know 10 times more than me that they are just not implementing the knowledge.
Yeah.
And think about, I mean, is that knowledge really doing anything if it's not being applied? There's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of nuance there as well. I mean, I won't bash too much on knowledge, but because I love learning, I read like 2 to 3 books a week.
Yeah.
But at some point you got to realize, you know, like.
Exactly. Yeah. At what stage is it nothing more than just procrastination?
Yeah. When you're using learning as procrastination, that's probably a good idea to like take a step back and just start applying and just see how it goes. Because, I mean, look, life is a scientific experiment, sort of, and you're the n equals 1, you're the only subject, and you're as well the researcher. So the only way you can figure out some of these ideas, whether they work for you or not, is if you apply them and see how they work for your life. Because all the ideas that you get from books or in science, most of them will be, if they're truthful, there will be average ideas that work for average people. Now, you're not average, you're you. You're the person that is the experiment, and then you have to figure out what works for you, and then you have to kind of realize, okay, this is the stuff that I resonate with the most, and I'm going to keep doing that. And I think that gets missed a lot, is the trial and error kind of mentality is what gets missed, because people are feeling like, well, I can shortcut that, you know, like I can always keep shortcutting it. And you can shortcut it to some extent, but you will rarely have true knowledge from a book unless you actually start applying it. Because if you start applying it, you see how it works for you, whether it's a match, and then you can start upgrading it, and it becomes yours. I mean, the book itself, it's just a starting point. It's really about troubleshooting. You know, success is about troubleshooting. It's not about having the perfect idea. You know, it's about being this scientist who's just trying out crazy things. And to be fair, like the first thing, if you try out, like the first thing that you try out, if it's perfect or if you think that it's 100% good, you're already too late. You should be starting at 80% ready and then seeing how it works and then just upgrading from there. I found this to be a revelation to stop being perfectionist. You know, that was like holding me back for years, man, like especially with videos. Yeah. Terrible. It's like I feel the pain, you know. I do like 500 takes of a video sometimes, you know, because I would miss like a word, or I mean, I would just mispronounce something, or I'd make a mistake with a year when I mentioned a research study, and I just redo the take. And that was a perfectionist thing. I could have just easily edited it somehow, you know. But yeah.
Done is better than perfect, right?
I'll live and learn.
Yeah. So at the moment, then, I mean, when you're not on planes or traveling, I mean, what does a typical day in the life look like?
I'm a very simple person, man. Like if you film me with a camera throughout 24 hours, you'd think I'm the most boring person in the world. You would actually think I'm not a person. You would think I'm a robot, and that's because of my. I surrender to the structure. You know, I'm the type of person that surrenders to the routine. Whatever is in my routine, I just execute it, and I feel like I like that because I don't have to decide what I'm gonna do. I just have my things already pre-made that I need to execute that day. So yeah, I mean, typical day, wake up, first, toilet, weigh myself. After weighing myself, go outside, stare at the sun if the weather is sunny, to wake up faster, meditate at the same time, somewhat of a, let's say 3 to 5 minutes. I usually don't do very long meditations. Sometimes I use apps on my phone for meditation to just kind of guide me if I need that to get kind of in the right headspace. And then afterwards, I will simply start working. Like there's going to be my morning routine is 15 minutes. Sometimes it incorporates a cold shower. So I have this thing where I cycle cold showers. Let's say I'm going to do cold showers for 2 weeks, and I'm going to stop and do it for 2 weeks again. I cycle a lot of things. I cycle saunas, I cycle cold showers. I kind of go through cyclic nature of these two things instead of doing them all the time. Then I'm going to hit up my work. There's going to be a work block of about 3 to 4 hours or so. Work block of 3 to 4 hours. There's mini blocks between the 3 to 4 hours, which last about 45 minutes to an hour, and then followed by a 15-minute break. So I'm going to knock these out. I'm going to get some food afterwards. So I get my first meal in, I'd say about 4 to 5 hours after waking up. A meal. Then review some of the stuff I've done, do some less hardcore stuff, because that first work block is where I really knock out the hardest stuff. And then I go into review a little bit of my training, and then I hit the gym. Get the gym done, come back home, get food, then either review more work. That is, if most of the days are going to be like that, and then if there's something else, I might have a little bit of free time on well, let's say on a Friday or on a Saturday, I'm going to try to have about an hour or two to spend with someone I care about. And that's for the most of the other time. If you catch me on a Sunday 11:30 p.m., I'm going to probably be at the laptop or listening to an audiobook or something, you know, like there's not going to be, I have my, let's go like this. The way I like to organize my schedule, which might be interesting for a lot of people, is that I like watching TV shows. I like playing video games. I like doing all these things. But what I don't like is that these things have control over me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually download all of that stuff, and I'm gonna watch and play all of it at once. So I'm gonna literally binge watch the entire week's worth of TV shows at once on a Sunday.
Okay.
And I'm going to follow that up with some work where I'm going to plan the next day or listen to a book or something like that. But there's going to be a block on Sunday or some other day of the week where I usually use Sunday or Wednesday. And I'm going to binge watch that because I don't want to be in a reactive state as those episodes are coming out throughout the week and then just slowly chipping it every single day. I'm just going to rather time block that, enjoy it while it lasts, and then continue grinding.
Jeez.
Similarly with video games. Instead of playing every day for 30 minutes or thinking about it every single day, I'm having that as an end to a successful week.
Yeah.
And there's some research on this that if you kind of have something planned ahead that you're looking more forward to it, there's some weird vague research on it, but it's sort of like, in my mind, it makes sense because currently we're all distracted. I mean, it's very easy to get distracted. So if I'm being hit up by notifications all the time, it's all the time like taking my focus away. But if I have an idea, okay, all these episodes are coming out, I can just ignore all of that stuff. Sunday is gonna come, man. Like, and you look forward to it, you grind, you work hard, you hustle hard. Sunday comes, relax, do all that stuff, and then continue on. And I find this to be perfect for my type of, some of my people I just pointed out there, you know, it's not just, this is what works for me. Not a universal recommendation. So my clients, I like to have a cutoff period in a day, which is like past 6 p.m., no work, just relaxation. I totally respect that. That works for a lot of people. Depends which phase of your life you're in. If you're in a super grind mode, when I was doing daily YouTube videos, I was literally working 10 hours a day every day, 10 to 14 hours a day, like literally every single day. There was not a single day that I took a break. That was one thing. But if I'm in a less immersed way, then I do these tricks to make my schedule make more time for people and more time for enjoyment somewhat, you know. But yeah, as I said, the cutoff time in the day is a really good idea. If you like that, try it out. But try to binge watching as well. I find it very, very effective, you know. You're not in a reactive state. You actually decide when you're gonna watch it, you know. So it gives you some of that power back.
Yeah, yeah. Jeez. Because I was going to say, like, where does the sort of enjoyment and the pleasure come from if it's so regimented all the time? But I suppose you're getting that at the end of, you know that's going to be your reward. So
80-20. 80 structure, 20 flexibility. Similarly with the diet, but 80 with work, 100% on point, 80% of the time, and then there's 20% where I'm more flexible, and I find this balance point to work for me. And of course, sometimes it gets 90-10, sometimes it gets like 50-50 if I'm traveling. But there's usually the balance is 80-20, and I find this to work perfectly for my situation.
Brilliant. It's been, as I say, like, I really, really enjoy listening to your answers. So much of what you say resonates with me. I've been into the sort of personal development for a long time, and yeah, I think everything that you say is brilliant.
Thanks.
I suppose at this stage it'd be really good to maybe dive a little bit deeper. And maybe handle some of the more sort of philosophical questions around about, purpose, legacy, success, I really enjoy getting into. So yeah, Mario, at this stage, what do you feel is your purpose?
Currently, purpose, I would say that what I can do, my purpose is to use all my potential as a human being to make this world the tiniest better that I can, just to make it a little bit better. I would say that a grand purpose is amazing if you have one. I like to think of myself as not this ultimate creature. I do the best I can, and my purpose is really at the moment to use everything that I know, all my capabilities, pretty much everything I can do, and just make it a little bit better, you know, as much as I can. And that purpose might be slightly different in a decade from now or 2 decades when I don't know, maybe I'm going to grow a bigger brand, maybe I'm going to do like some kind of special thing, you know. It's not important, but it's important that you're doing the best you can. And the purpose talk is amazing. I really appreciate when people talk about their purpose, but I also like to see a lot of action. I like to see a lot of like tangible, hardcore action where my purpose is literally receiving that email in a day where a guy says like, man, like I watched your videos and last year I lost like 50 pounds. I've got a new job, started a business, completely transformed my life. That's my purpose. Like those people are my purpose, not me or my own development. Although I develop myself as kind of like a way to improve what I'm putting out there and to make myself, of course, more valuable in the world. But that's the purpose, that email, that screenshot, that comment on YouTube, comment on Instagram, doing a live event, people come up to you at the end of the event and say, man, like, you're incredible, right? You helped me so much. And for me to hear that is something that it's unbelievable, because where I came from, I mean, it was totally, I would never imagine that, man. It's like you're living your dream literally every single day. And I don't think that, I mean, for me personally, I can make it better, but it's already amazing, you know, like I'm already living the dream that I wanted to.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. What would you like your legacy to be?
When people think back and just kind of think of my name or whoever thinks that, just to see, okay, he had the right core values and he put out the content out there, he helped people, you know. And that's kind of the thing that you can ultimately, at least what I'm really proud of, is my impact on other people. And that's one thing that I would be super proud of if at the end of this life I would have so much impact that it's actually recognizable. I'm not really, to be fair, I would say that even my legacy is great, but that's not my primary motivation to do stuff. You know, it's not my primary thing, because you can be remembered for random things. Like you can create a legacy even though you're not helping a lot of people. You know, you can create different types of legacies.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, my purpose and what I feel as a human being is for all of us is to truly become the best we can be, and ultimately we will be a good example for others to help others. And yeah, I mean, we're at the end of the day, you know, like the king and the pawn go in the same box, right? So yeah.
I love that. How do you define success?
2 words: complete freedom. Right? Complete freedom. You can do whatever you want, whoever you want, and whenever you want, and all, like pretty much everything is free. And when you have that complete freedom, you do the right thing that is aligned with your core values and your beliefs, and you're actually helping someone with that success. Because I mean, you can be somewhat successful, but if you're not actually aligned, I mean, someone will define success in various ways, but I'm looking more like helping someone in a way that it doesn't have to be worldwide. It can be even in a small domain, even if it's one person, or even helping yourself, or in any way, just making sure that you're contributing value. At the end of the day, it's really about adding value. And you don't have to be feeling bad if you don't have this million people following you. You can add value to your own little community. You can add value to your own family. You can add value to your own pet. You know, you can add value everywhere if you look at the world as a place where you can potentially add value. You know, like help the granny across the street, you added value, right? You help someone, give them like, they're like at the airplane, you know, they're like super paranoid, and you help them like bring the bag up the stairs or something, you know, like they're like, okay, oh my God, you know, you helped me so much. In that moment, that probably was a massive amount of value for those people, more than if you, I don't know, flew to Mars, you know, like that. It's sort of like that, you know, and you have these opportunities in everyday life where we miss the point where we think that these small things aren't valuable anymore, and we think that the successful person has to be the one that goes to Mars or that invents a new, I don't know, energy source or something, you know. A successful person can, like, a successful person is my grandmother, my grandfather, like these are successful people. They've helped people around them. They lived solid lives. They put in the work. They did the best they could most of the time. In my world, they're successful. Like that is success. And they were, I mean, they were free in their own domain, right? And now, how much you view that you need to be free, that's sort of a personal question, you know. So yeah.
Who or what inspires you?
People that get results inspire me. Like people that get results because I said something, or they heard someone said something, and they just work hard and they kind of beat the odds. You know, that inspires me a lot. When I see people beat the odds, whether it's business, relationships, or fitness or anything, when I just see someone crushing it, that's a huge inspiration for me. Like they could have had like 100 followers somewhere, you know, and they just beat the odds. They're just weird kids from somewhere, from nowhere. I'm like, oh my God, that guy is like an inspiration. And you can, I mean, I read a lot of biographies, you know. I mean, one of my favorites, I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger's Total Recall. I love that book. It's fantastic. A lot of these books that are biography, like Steve Jobs' biographies, is very interesting for me. There's a whole number of people that I could say that they're kind of inspirational figure for me. But at the end of the day, when you start, when you're putting out content, people will inspire you that kind of get result. Like your people will inspire, your community will inspire you, which is kind of interesting. And I wish that I had this one person that is my inspirational figure, but it's really like everybody, you know. Like I see things that inspire me in anybody, sort of, you know. Anybody who's taking action, is pushing themselves. I get a little bit of inspiration from that. It's almost like I know, it's almost happening at a very small micro level.
I do believe that you can take inspiration from really anyone and anything. Yeah.
Yeah, if you understand the context, you know, if you understand the odds against what the person is fighting against, you know, like, oh my God, you know, like that's crazy. You know, if you can just put yourself in that person's position, and you're like, damn, that's hard. You know, like that guy, he has 100 subscribers, he made like 500 videos. That must be really hard, you know, like who would make 500 videos and stay on point daily if you had only 100 people following you? Maybe he's not doing it perfectly right, but there's something about that, you know, like there's something about that person persisting, even though they have nothing but belief, you know, like, and those are some of the crazy things that I think often get missed. Similarly with the whole success talk, is there's inspirational things happening around you every single day, and you don't really see them, right? Because you're always stuck in looking at really huge, big worldwide level, where there's stuff happening every day, you know, man. It's super inspiring, you know. You can inspire yourself, you know, like if you read your own journals or stuff like that, you're like, oh my God, you know, like how did I do this, you know? Because you kind of judge the situation based on the current state of mind you're in. So sometimes when you're in this whole inspirational state of mind, like you're listening to your old interview, you're like, oh my God, you know, did I say that? You know, that made total sense. And similarly with audiobooks, I love audiobooks as a way of simply feeding my mind with very inspirational talks. And I mean, there's so many ways you can inspire yourself.
Yeah. This isn't really a question that I had written down, but I'm really interested actually to hear on what you think the reasons are that your following has kind of exploded, and why you've enjoyed the success that you have.
Well, from a technical standpoint, I just knew exactly what people needed to help with, right? I just knew that people have these perma problems, you know, like fat loss, muscle building, all that, and I just target them and give them the exact solution they need. And of course, that's a very technical solution. On the other hand, it's like, well, the belief that if you keep doing what you need to do, that you kind of know that it's going to work, but you keep doing it to see if it's going to work, and some of it just clicks. Because all those videos that I made close to 500 videos, man. And sometimes, I mean, I judge my own content. I think it's terrible. Sometimes it just goes viral. You know, something I think terrible goes viral. And it's just a lot of reps, man. Like a lot of reps. Like it takes hundreds of reps to get one home run. And that one home run kind of carries your channel or your social media or your one concept, that you just start realizing, well, this is what works, and I can double down on that. It's a lot of trial and error until you find that one thing. And you find your own core message. And then when you hammer on that, and you also get refined, and through coaching, you start feeling more what people really struggle with, and you just know that need, and then you focus on it. A lot of it is like, not caring about what you think is important, but actually looking at what people think is important. You know, like understanding that what they need is not what is in your head that is the good idea. Because I mean, I make the video, man, I think it's the best video in the world, barely gets any views. And I make a video that is a terrible video in my world, like I'm looking at it, come on, man, did I say that? And that video blows up. And you never really know. And my philosophy was put in your reps, trust the process, you know, and if you put in enough reps, there's going to be home runs. You know, there's going to be home runs, but it's a matter of repetitions, matter of paying your dues. Right? And I've been carried with that philosophy. I mean, I've been sort of applying that philosophy in videos, but where it's really evident is the gym and fitness, where you put in the reps, and then you see over time the progress. And that's just a translation from fitness, a principle that works in the gym with progressive overload and getting stronger, now applied to business. And it's also a principle, if we go way back in video gaming, you put in the reps, you grind, you get better, you put in deliberate practice, and then eventually you start getting much, much better. And it's not even that much that you have to get twice as good, you have to put in twice as more reps. It's not even that much. There's certain tipping points at some point where you start getting extremely good because you just went that extra, like a little bit extra, more than other people. That's what, at least what I found with YouTube. You can recognize that extra effort, just that little bit extra.
Yeah, great stuff. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice was that that you can become good at almost anything. That you are not actually. Here's the caveat to that advice, right? So you can't become Kobe Bryant if you're me, right? You're not gonna become Kobe, but you can become pretty damn good at basketball if you put in deliberate practice. That's the best. The best piece of advice is really that it's about skills. It's not about being as born with something, or that still you have to put in. If you put in the work, you're gonna get the result. The deliberate practice principle. That's like the best advice that I ever see, because I knew that I don't know English, but if I put enough reps, I'm gonna learn English. I don't know how to do video editing, but if I edit enough videos, I'm gonna know how to video edit. I don't know how to build a business, but if I struggle enough, I will figure it out. Because what this principle allows you to think, well, it's just a matter of reps. It's a matter of time. And you're not like put in this box by your genetics or your environment or anything. Because if you truly look at your life, what you know, your skills, it's all a matter of practice. And I think practice, again, gets lost a lot because we think that if you watch the course that you already have the skills. Where practice is really where you learn those valuable lessons to make that content in true knowledge. So information plus practice plus context gives knowledge. Information by itself doesn't give you much. And yeah, I mean, that's literally the best piece of advice. I think I got that in my early 20s, that you're not defined by what you currently have, but what you work for. You know, that's that kind of thing. And man, it was just a matter of like putting in the reps. When I realized that, it was like, oh my God, you know, I just have to work more, you know, and that's it. And smart work, of course, you know, like you want to be able to see the outcomes of your actions and then adjust based on that. So troubleshoot. But the reps are kind of a given, you know, without taking actions, nothing happens.
If you had the opportunity to speak to the 20-year-old you, what would you say? Oh boy,
a 20-year-old me is a drunk, half drunk, overweight World of Warcraft player who is literally not concerned with anything else but passing with minimum grades in the college and getting the new item in World of Warcraft. So, boy, I would just tell myself to trust myself a little bit more. Because back then I believed that I knew what was the right thing to do, but I just didn't act on it. You know, like I was very afraid of what people would think of me, and I was always thinking that I should fit this kind of I guess social norm, and I was always kind of following. Even the World of Warcraft might sound extreme to some people, but it was still a part of what my friends were doing, so I was kind of fitting the norm. You know, everything was fitting the norm. Getting drunk was fitting the norm. It wasn't really listening to what I need to do. It's more like, okay, I'm just gonna do it because they do it. You know, and it's just like go with the flow. And if I had that kind of, I guess, the fact is, I probably wouldn't listen to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like trust yourself a little bit more, and you know what the right thing is, and that would be very helpful, because I think I could have made some changes. But to be fair, I don't think that if I could change right now anything, like truly change, I wouldn't. Like, I think it was just perfectly fine. Yeah, all shaped me who I am today. Like, not a zero thing I would change.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's what you said there. It's very difficult. I think people feel a lot of resistance, or they feel as though they don't want to go against the norm, against the grain, or do things that others might perceive as being different. How would you encourage people to kind of break free from that?
To be honest, man, like at the end of the day, it's out of your life. You can do your life, or you can do your life in someone else's design, and it's your choice. Like, you have to pick, and it's okay if you pick that someone else can choose what you need to do, and that's totally fine if you're cool with that. I know plenty of people who do that, and they're totally happy. At the end of the day, your happiness set point will adjust itself, and you're gonna be happy. You're not gonna see much difference, you know, unless you get examples of the opposite working and things like that. One thing that I guess I could only speak from my own experience is that in my case, pretty much I had no acceptance from anybody when I started this, right? And the reason why you don't get acceptance is the fact is that what's happening here and what's happening in the real world, people don't see what's going on in your head. You know, they don't see the change of identity that you have. Like when I was overweight, you know, people didn't see that in my head I already had the six-pack. You know, because I was already doing the actions that lead to that six-pack. But it takes a while for the body to catch up to what's going on here. And people will have a sort of an identity of who you are supposed to be, and they're going to impose that on you, and they're going to define you. And when you try to change, that's going to be in conflict. So you're going to go against those definitions. And a lot of people from your life will not actually be able to accept that. Because some of them will be telling themselves a story, well, if he can change, then something must be wrong with me, so I might as well just not accept that and just shove him away, you know, like he's not a part of my life anymore. Because what people are doing is really, most of the time when people are judging you in a way, they're kind of trying to make their world have sense. So if you try to lose weight, people would be like, yo, you can't do that, you know, you can't have a six-pack, you know, you can't do that. What they're really saying is that I couldn't get a six-pack, so you shouldn't get a six-pack, because that wouldn't make my world make sense. So I have to tell you what you need to do, because I need to make my world kind of make sense. And that's same with business, that's same with social skills, and that's same with a lot of other things. And I feel like that you can live your life in many different ways, but you can be trapped with what the social norm is, and people can be sort of operational in that situation. I personally couldn't. That's why I'm here, because I went against the norm, and it is a very painful path. You know, you're not gonna be accepted, and you're choosing in some way a harder life. You know, because the pain that you choose with doing that is immediate. The pain of choosing to live by someone else's standard is delayed. So the pain that you get is probably going to be at the end of your life if you choose to live by other people's standards. But if you are living your own life now, you will have pain every single day. Yeah, so it's kind of like choosing which one you want.
That is a killer answer. Serious, that's brilliant.
Thanks.
Yeah, that is really, really good. Really like that. And I think a lot of people can take a lot from that. If you could change anything in the world, what would it be and why?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think we touched on it when we talked about travel. What would make the world a little bit more understanding? Oh yeah, okay. I would have the entire world speak the same language.
Oh wow.
It doesn't have to be English, doesn't have to be any new language, but just entire world speak the same language.
Gee, why?
I think it would help a lot just to resolve so many things that are happening. I think that the language barrier is one of those things that I can personally see to be a big barrier for spreading knowledge to people that are my colleagues. For example, if they speak only Croatian, they can't even access books, and most of the stuff isn't really translated properly. And the language barrier is such a huge deal when you go to certain countries and you see that people would want to communicate with you and they can't learn from you because they don't know how to speak your language. You know, imagine if everybody would understand what we're talking about right now, but most people don't. Like most of the world doesn't know English, right? And it's kind of crazy. Like all this content that we're talking about, it can only reach so few people that really understand this. And compared to, like, imagine if the entire planet could really understand what we're talking about here, it would have made a little bit more difference, you know. And yeah, that's like an easy fix. It wouldn't solve pretty much, I mean, probably wouldn't solve anything, you know, like, but it would make the world a little bit of a better place, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you give me a lot, like, more to answer, I could probably like write an essay on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't, it's bizarre, like the number of conversations that I've had to you, I've never actually considered that not, you know, everybody in the world can understand them. But you're right, that's true. Like, not everyone is going to be able to understand what we're talking
my
about.
parents will not be able to understand this right now. Like,
gee, okay.
It's kind of crazy, right? And I'm their son, right? I'm supposed to be able to communicate with them, but I'm speaking a different language. Like, imagine that. Like, we're living a totally different world because we can't communicate in the same way in certain things. If I'm talking about personal development in English, it's like I'm in this different world. Language defines almost a different reality.
Yeah.
So it would bring us kind of closer to the similar reality.
Definitely. Yeah. Whoa, Mario, this has been an absolutely phenomenal interview. I've loved every minute. I feel like I've just had a master's in life from you. Seriously, I've learned an enormous amount, and yeah, it's genuinely been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. And I can't wait to see where you're going to continue to go on to. I wish you all the best on your life journey, and yeah, brilliant stuff.
Thank you, Elliot. I'm truly humbled to be here, and I hope my message really resonates with people and helps them a lot. I'm just a guy, right? I mean, at the end of the day, nobody's cut from a different cloth. Whatever I'm doing, everybody can do, and it's just a matter of work and dedication and dedicating yourself to a certain path. And I just want to say that because I don't feel like I'm any way special. You know, the skill that I have is really persistence, and I work really hard, and that's one of the biggest things. You know, that's one of the huge issues that I think will help a lot of people, is because I'm just a normal guy, right? And yeah, that's what I want to point out.
I love that. I love your humility, and it's incredibly inspiring. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Really a pleasure being here.
Great. Cheers, Mario.